Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another news roundup video, and I hope you're doing well today. I am, because we just got even more, well, quite a bit more updates on the Batman Part 2. We're also going to dive into some other topics today. You guys know the drill here. There's timestamps on the video. If you want to skip around, you can do so, but obviously I recommend staying tuned to the whole video to stay up to date with absolutely everything. Leave a like on this video only if you do go on to enjoy it. Dislike it if you dislike it, and of course consider subscribing for more update videos like this. But first, breaking news before we get into the Batman stuff of this video. As I was editing it, yes, we got some breaking news. We might actually have our casting for Hal Jordan. So, from the Hollywood Reporter here, Kyle Chandler to star in HBO's Lanterns series. HBO's DC series Lanterns has found its Hal Jordan. Now, this is interesting because Deadline is saying Kyle Chandler in talks to star in Lanterns DC series for HBO, but the Hollywood Reporter is saying straight up he is Hal Jordan. Emmy winner Kyle Chandler is set to play the legendary member of the Green Lantern Corps in the series, sources tell the Hollywood Reporter. Lanterns is described as having a gritty, true detective vibe as it focuses on Jordan reluctantly mentoring a younger Lantern, John Stewart, and we basically know all of these details. HBO declined to comment, so I don't know if the Hollywood Reporter are going out on a limb to say that even though it's locked in, he is cast, but maybe it's the situation of he's not actually signed the deal, but the sources behind the scenes are telling various trades that, like, trust me, this is basically it. So with that being said, what are my thoughts about this? Because one thing that has surprised me about this actually is all the positive reactions I'm seeing. And I think I say that because Kyle Chandler is 59 years old, and normally when this happens, even though all the other frontrunners for the role were in their 50s other than Chris Pine, a lot of people are like, oh god, old man Hal Jordan. But maybe, you know, things are coming around to the point in where the audience is understanding what the vision is for this DC universe and Lanterns. And what I mean by that is, with me saying it for the 1000th time here again, this is a DCU that is hitting the ground running with heroes that exist but have already existed. And we know from the logline, the official synopsis, that Hal Jordan is a Lantern legend. He's a veteran Lantern, so he's already been doing his thing for like over 20 years potentially. So of course, like, Kyle Chandler being 59 might not be actually reflective of Hal Jordan's in-universe age, but let's just say Hal is in his 50s, and maybe, as I was saying, people are getting around to the idea that Hal Jordan is just going to be an older Lantern who's been doing his thing for quite a while, paired with the fact that Kyle Chandler is actually a fantastic actor. But this isn't really where the news ends. We did have Boris Kitt from the Hollywood Reporter, who wrote the story, saying, interesting aspect to this, Chandler does not have a movie component to his deal, according to my sources. And Apocalyptic Horseman said, yep, true, because Hal is a one-year deal, as in the DCU. Now, a lot of people are thinking, okay, with Kyle Chandler's age, 59, the fact that anyway, Hal Jordan is a much older Lantern legend in the DCU, and he's being paired with a much younger John Stewart, who is a rookie in this True Detective-inspired series and where they investigate this murder. Well, it may very well look like that Hal Jordan could perhaps be a goner by the end of this series, as in he might die at the very end. Sure, you could argue to me that, okay, maybe he just retires and hands the mantle down for John Stewart to be the main Lantern in the DCU, but with them uncovering this ancient, terrifying threat, this mystery, say whatever you want to say there's theories of parallax, this, that, and the other, I don't know, none of us really know, but yeah, it is interesting to consider that so far the details are from sources that it's a one-year deal for Hal Jordan. That just sounds like unique to the Lantern series and not going throughout the DCU from there on out. I think when you pair that with his age and maybe having one last hurrah with solving this murder and then uncovering this ancient terrifying thread, it does seem that he might bite the dust. And then yes, John Stewart will be propped up to be like the main DCU Lantern alongside that of, you know, David Corenswet's Superman and all all of the other heroes that we'll see in the present day DCU. What I really love about Kyle Chandler is that I can really imagine him being that detective kind of Green Lantern in this series who's already been doing it for quite a long time. He really does have those acting chops, that demeanor you would kind of imagine for the vision of this particular Hal Jordan, who's this many years in, and perhaps reluctantly taking on a John Stewart rookie to aid him in this investigation into this murder in the American heartland. But perhaps along the way, you know, they bounce off each other a little bit more. He teaches him some valuable lessons, but by the end of it, well, maybe it won't end up too well for him. A lot of people are saying this basically does kind of confirm that Hal is gone. There is no confirmation of that, but maybe the writing is on the wall. So all that's left for me to do now is to leave the floor open to you guys. What do you think of this casting for Hal Jordan? Again, it's not super locked in, even though the Hollywood Reporter is saying that he has basically been cast. Are you happy with it, with the whole idea in mind that it was always going to be an inevitability that Hal Jordan was going to be older after what we learned about the series? And with that being said, do you think he's going to die, kind of given what we know about this supposed one-year deal and the fact that Hal Jordan really is, you know, this much older? I'm already seeing a lot of people pointing out Friday Night Lights and how good his speech was in that movie, and then saying, imagine how good his Green Lantern oath will be. And this is something I'm a little bit almost already in advance concerned about, despite being really happy with this potential or tentative casting, if you will. It's the fact that Kyle Chandler might be so good, so badass as this like veteran Lantern legend Hal Jordan, that if he does die by the end of this series, it might make all of us fall in love with him so much that we wish we could have seen more of him in this role. But, you know, given the nature of the story and where things might go with what we're hearing, we might be left really desiring more. But again, that's just the nature of this iteration of the DCU, and it looks to be, once more, that John Stewart is going to be that mainline Green Lantern for the present day roster of heroes. Now, let's just dive into the dump of information that we've got from various outlets, from Entertainment Weekly, Collider, Screen Rant, because with the Penguin's release, Matt Reeves has obviously been doing quite a bit of interviews talking about this, that, and the other. Some stuff which is actually concerning for part 2 with regards to certain people who may or may not be coming back, who helped the magic happen in part 1. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But starting off here with Entertainment Weekly saying that the events of the 8-episode The Penguin, which take place 1 week after the Batman, will directly lead into the still under wraps plot for the Batman Part 2, currently scheduled to hit theaters on October 2nd, 2026, which is my birthday. I mean, could the stars be more aligned there? By the way, Farrell's Oz is already set to return for that sequel as well, and Reeves and his producing partner Dylan Clark are considering even more tie-in television series. I always wanted to make sure that each of the movies that we did with Rob, that central arc, the emotional arc of the story, would be Batman and Bruce's. Then when I was talking to Warner Brothers about signing for TV, I said what will be exciting to me is to take characters where there's not enough real estate in a movie to cover their story in full and really dig into them. I want it to all be this sweeping Batman crime epic. So what I'm really happy about with reading stuff like this is that Matt Reeves hasn't only doubled down but tripled down now on the exploration of not just the Penguin but more Batverse series. And I say doubled down because he's talked about this recently, but now there's more interviews coming out with him saying, yeah, like more series in this world, which for a while we weren't so sure if that was going to happen because, you know, once there was a GCPD show that apparently evolved into an Arkham show, but then that kind of didn't really seem to be happening. So really what was just left is the Penguin, but no, they really are going forward with more series by the sounds of it, and with what we're about to read out, that just further gets solidified as their intention. Entertainment Weekly even go on to say here, while the GCPD series did not move forward, parts of that treatment were reworked for the Penguin. Similarly, the Arkham show as it was originally conceived isn't going ahead, but Reeves clarifies the things that we're talking about now are evolved versions of those things. It's not like that just didn't work. It was like, we need to evolve this. I would describe it less as something that didn't work out and more as something that is still along a path toward arriving at its destination. So the way I would look at this is that I think with future series that we're going to see from the Batverse, hopefully, is that we're going to see, just like how the GCPD, some of that was worked into the Penguin, we're going to see the ideas for Arkham work into future spaces of future shows for the Batverse. I mean, they could have already have done that and injected maybe a little bit of that DNA in the Penguin show, because as you guys know, we're going to get Arkham Asylum, or Arkham State Hospital rather, in the Penguin series, and that definitely, from what I've said in my no spoilers review, gets into the haunted house that is Arkham. It is absolutely chaotic and corrupt there, so look forward to that. But this, just kind of having seen that myself, gives me the indication that, okay, if we get more shows, which it sounds like we are, it does seem as though that they're just going to probably use, instead of like a whole Arkham show, it looks like we might just be kind of going back to Arkham here and there and again throughout the different projects that we may be getting. And Entertainment Weekly go and say he's not ready to reveal what those next plans are, and in truth, some of it is predicated on how audiences respond to the Penguin, yet he feels confident that Blois, as well as another bigwig, Sarah Aubrey, head of Max Original Programming, maintain excitement for what else they can do together. And yes, he does have general guidelines for what that will be. So that is great news, because it makes sense that it's predicated on how well the spin-off show for the Batman does the Penguin, and guess what? Is absolutely knocking it out the park. So I think HBO, DC Studios, Gunn himself will see this and be like, well, yeah, we're giving you the green light, 1,000 green lights to explore more series in this Batverse. So I am very, very confident that's going to happen now, because this HBO original, The Penguin, as I said, is so successful already. I think it's going to continue to be getting glowing reviews as the episodes go on. So it really is self-explanatory at this point that the head of HBO and Max Original Programming, Sarah Aubrey and Casey Blois and whatnot, will just be like, yeah, what else can you give us? Like, this is doing well for us. It's giving us subscriptions. So what more have you got up your sleeve, Matt Reeves? And as he says, he does have general guidelines for what those series will be. And I'm bringing it up again, but we did hear from the Hollywood Reporter quite a while back now that Matt Reeves did meet with writers and directors about exploring the ideas of pursuing potential spin-offs to Matt Reeves' Batverse, such as Scarecrow, Professor Pig, Clayface, and whatnot. So I do feel like what scoop they got back then was all of this very early in motion. Like, it was all very tentative, don't get me wrong. None of that was confirmed in terms of, oh, they're definitely doing a Professor Pig series or a movie or whatever it was, or a Scarecrow thing. But I do feel like the seeds of this have been going along for a long time. It's just that now we finally got the Penguin having come to full fruition. It's doing really well. So you see where I'm going with this. Those early conversations will likely be brought to fruition. It's just back then they kind of wanted to scope out maybe what writers and directors would be up for it. So for Batverse fans, this is absolutely fantastic news. Entertainment Weekly continued to say, 1, Pattinson's Batman will stick to the movies, at least for now. That's why Reeves and his team decided to not include him at all in this first series. The show is Oz's story, not to be overshadowed by the Bat. Now, Matt Reeves says that's not to say that there would never be an appearance by Batman or Bruce or something like that on a future series. Lauren and I did speak, do we find a way to get Rob to somehow be in this show? But that was an afterthought. So on the latter there, that was interesting that after it, they were thinking, oh wait, can we quickly film something? Do we do that to put Rob in this series? Because they could have easily done that even as an afterthought and put it in as like a ending scene in a ways that I feel like they could have done. But it's great to know that as for the future series that Matt Reeves is cooking away very secretly behind the scenes, that Batman is very likely to have an appearance in one of those. Speaking to more broad themes, he muses on how Gotham is perennially corrupt. It's the idea that it draws people in the way that it does with Oscorp, and this idea of trying to grab for the American dream, the dark side of the American dream. It's more that it's taking place within this same world, he continues. If you watch the whole thing, it's an epic narrative and a meditation on the corruption and why Gotham is the way it is. When I talk about the other shows that we're talking about doing, what's exciting is to think about going down another alley that we weren't able to go down with the Penguin and Batman. So exactly, another character gives another perspective, another rogues gallery villain. What's their perspective? We saw that with the Batman, a very point-of-view, detective-driven mystery story that we saw through Bruce's eyes. This is now in the Penguin through Oz's eyes, but what would it be like through, I don't know, Scarecrow's eyes? And then maybe in that story you could see what drives him to create this fear toxin through his own experience in Gotham and a different shade on everything. You get where I'm going with that, and how Matt Reeves plans to execute his vision, or like the overall bottom line vision for how we can get into other stories within the Batverse. Now, Reeves is gearing up for the next movie sequel. The script is finished, he confirms, and everyone is preparing to start production next year. He does tease that there's a period of time Part 2 will jump to after the first film and TV series. Oz does become one of the entry points into the movie, he adds. I can't tell you where it goes from there, except to say that we're super excited about it. So this is great, I mean, for self-explanatory reasons, but as you guys know, I mean, this is what I was hoping to do at the end of last year, but as we get into the new year, we're going to start to hear about casting and things like that. Like, imagine a new Deadline article where they've got wind of they're looking at this actor. We may not know the character just yet, but in videos over here, we'll be breaking down, you know, oh man, who could this kind of actor be playing? Or there's rumors about it. Like, we're about to get into the thick of that now that the script is done, and it's going to get greenlit into pre-production, and things really start swinging. But as for the period of time that Part 2 will jump to after the first film, even though that Oz is the entry point into the movie. So the entry point would be Oz as Kingpin. That will be addressed kind of at the very beginning. You know what? I wouldn't be surprised, since Batman isn't in the Penguin show, if that intro monologue from Batman in Part 2, similar to Part 1, we get kind of an update of where things are at from Batman's perspective in the Gotham Project Journal. But there's also a scene, maybe similar to my idea, about Oz meeting with Batman, not like deliberately meeting with him, but something happening as a bit of a, you know, updating of the parameters of the situation between the criminal element, Oz at the top, and how Batman is seeing this. That would be really cool, and it would be really cool if they added that into the intro of Part 2. I mean, we know that he's literally the entry point, so I feel like Matt Reeves kind of gave away that in that opening monologue for Part 2, that is very likely to include Oz. But as for the jump, before anyone thinks it's going to jump like a couple of years or something like that, we know that is literally not going to happen. I think this is actually referencing the recent quotes that we've also gone over in another video, in how the end of the Penguin series will take you up until near the end of the year. Obviously, I can't tell you the exact dates, but we know Matt Reeves said it's not quite got to Christmas or New Year's, but we're getting there. So for all we know, the Batman Part 2 picks up the 22nd, the 23rd of December. The events of the film go over Christmas Day and possibly end poetically on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. Like, new year, new me, new Gotham kind of thing, right? That would be really sweet. And I hope we get some snow. You guys know my thoughts about this, but I definitely think that's what this period of time Part 2 is jumping to is all about. Now, up next is one of the concerning things, and I say concerning because you never know, right? Collider say, I think that Greig Fraser's cinematography in The Batman is nothing short of brilliant. I have to ask you, is Greig definitely shooting the sequel? And Reeves said, I don't know yet. I certainly hope that the timing will work out for that, but I actually don't know. We're not to the place where we know that yet. I hope that's the case because I just love working with him. And he goes on to say, I love working with Greig, and I certainly hope that we'll continue on the Batman Part 2, so we'll see, but it really comes down to the timing and whether or not our schedules can align. We can't forget that Greig Fraser is very sought after and in demand. We've got Denis Villeneuve's Dune Part 3, and I believe that is expected to release December 2026. And if you think about it, right, that would mean filming would be sometime next year. And the Batman is looking at releasing October 2nd, 2026. And Greig Fraser's going to be kind of torn between Denis Villeneuve and Matt Reeves. Like, what's he going to... So that's why it's kind of actually low-key concerning, right? Because if Denis Villeneuve is actually tackling Dune Part 3 rather than having a bit of a break in between Part 2 and Part 3, this actually could cause a scheduling conflict. And, Greig Fraser is absolutely pivotal to what made the Batman movie with all of those gorgeous shots. So I really hope this works out, because if you try and think of somebody else, I mean, there are other great cinematographers that would emulate the stylistic choices of the Batman Part 1, so I'm sure they would pull it off. But you see what I mean. It's like, I really hope that this works out. Now, as for Michael Giacchino, who created the fantastic The Batman score, Matt Reeves says, he did promise me. He goes, look, I will always make sure that even when I'm directing, I will write music for your stuff. So I'm hoping that's the case. That timing will work out. I suppose it would be hard if he was in the middle of directing something at that moment, but I certainly hope that's the case. So this is kind of concerning, but not maybe as much as what I was just going over with Greig Fraser, because the Michael Giacchino thing is such that he is also a busy guy. He doesn't only compose fantastic scores, but he is busy with directing as well. But he did also say to Matt Reeves, look, even if I'm doing that, I'm going to somehow make time. But Matt Reeves is kind of also acknowledging that, well, if you're kind of actually in the middle of directing something, that might really be hard to do, but we're going to have to see if that works out. So can you imagine if the Batman Part 2 didn't have Michael Giacchino or Greig Fraser? I mean, to be fair, Michael Giacchino's son did do the score for the Penguin series, so who knows, that'd be pretty cool if he did do the score for Batman Part 2 if his father was busy, but we're gonna have to wait and see. I think that will be fine. And Matt Reeves was also asked about the Court of Owls speculation for the Batman Part 2, and he says, we can't comment on the movie because we are doing the movie, and then you'd know what movie we're doing, and we're not gonna say that yet. So I mean, he didn't really say anything there. I mean, he couldn't. And, I don't blame him at all. The whole Court of Owls thing, as we know, is just complete and utter speculation as of right now. Please, please, please do not think that is happening. I see attitudes like that all the time when, large theories start, gaining momentum. And this all happened, as we know, because what Matt Reeves said about how Part 2 goes even deeper into corruption, which is pretty crazy because since the movie had all of the main pillars of Gotham corrupt, the DA, the commissioner, and everyone like that, well, that's why the audience and even myself entertained the theory of, well, what's more corrupt than having everyone corrupt in the city? Well, that's a shadow group behind them, the Court of Owls. And really, it's going to be interesting if it isn't the Court of Owls and it's something completely unexpected, because don't forget, they can get into, to be fair, other types of corruption without the Court of Owls, or they could lay the seeds down for the Court of Owls for a Part 3. Other examples of corruption that they could get into is my theory of, was the Arkham's murder-suicide thing actually the way the Riddler presented it on the news? What if Martha's mother didn't really kill her husband and then herself? What if it was just framed to look that way? And what if, naturally, after what Bruce learned in the first movie, he decides to look into how Martha was in and out of institutions over a few years and heard what she was saying and what she was claiming, and then decides to look into that, and she finds out that she wasn't crazy or suffering with mental health issues whatsoever, and then that gets him down a whole new rabbit hole of, okay, this weird kind of ambiguous corruption and the truth of what really happened to the Arkhams. That's a seed that could pertain to the first movie, because if you didn't know already, Matt Reeves said that the seeds for this are in the first film, and it goes to a place that Batman couldn't even anticipate in the first one. I don't know, that's just a theory I've had going for a while. I posted that on Twitter earlier today, and would love to know your thoughts on that, and any other ideas that you think could get into corruption for Part 2. Now, in some other related Batman news with regards to Matt Reeves, he spoke a little bit about Batman Cape Crusader to Collider. So they asked, with the success of the show, has anyone brought up the idea of a third season? And Matt Reeves said that there are all kinds of metrics by which that is landed upon. It's based on the first month performance, and those are meetings that we have yet to have. We're crossing our fingers, and we hope so. We're deep into the second season. We hope there will be a third, but we just don't know yet. And when being asked about where they are in the second season, do we think that we'll see it next year? He says, gosh, I don't know what the date is, but we're in the midst of animatics. The episodes have all been written, and we're underway in the terms of starting to realize the show. I would say 2025, and I'm just excited for an episode that will explore the Joker with that tease that we got at the end, and like the new twist and innovation that they can give on that character. But I personally really enjoyed Batman Cape Crusader. Very down for season 2. We already know we're getting that, and fingers crossed even for a season 3. And up next, we've also had quite a few trailers. Superman and Lois, The Sandman season 2, a little behind the scenes look. I plan on doing a unique video for that tomorrow. But as for Superman and Lois, we got a new glimpse at the 4th and final season, and this is a very, very dramatic trailer. We even see Superman dead on the floor as Lois goes up to him, and it looks like there's a gigantic hole in his chest. It's gonna be, I mean, this series makes me really emotional with the way I just think the actors are so superb. Elizabeth Tulloch as Lois Lane, she's incredible. Michael Cudlitz, I'm so excited for him as Lex Luthor in this final season. It's also cool to know that he shaved his beard off. I mean, I know that's not like a huge deal, but some people were making a bit of a commentary about that at a time. Why do we keep getting bearded Lex Luthors? We had one in Titans as well. So it's nice to know that he's kind of going full Lex mode at a certain point in the season. And we even see Jordan, like an extended scene of when he confronts Lex Luthor in the Superboy mode, actually pin him up against a wall. So that gets a bit more intense than I think those first trailers get across. It also looks like they put Superman in the fortress, by the way, so that's probably how he's going to maybe long-term get healed. We get glimpses of Steel versus their version of Doomsday, so I wonder if that's how the Doomsday threat gets handled after Superman is defeated and killed, arguably. But would Steel really be able to finish off Doomsday in where Superman couldn't? I don't know about that. And then when it comes to death predictions, could Steel die this season? I would love to know any and all thoughts down in the comments below. And as I was making this video, ladies and gentlemen, we got, going over to Marvel news here, the first trailer for Thunderbolts. Now, I think it is the same one that leaked, but I haven't really spoken about it before. And just seeing it, obviously, in full quality here gives you a bit of a better impression and look at what's going on. And I have to say, I really do, that I'm really enjoying the direction Marvel is going, just in the terms of how, like, this isn't like another multiverse kind of story movie. And it's the same thing for Captain America. I liked the vibe of that trailer as well. I know some people have got various things to say about it, and fair enough. Like, whether you like it, whether you dislike it, whatever, right? But what I have to say about this is it is kind of giving vibes, and you may have heard people say this before, back to the days of like Civil War. Now, that's not me saying it's going to be a literal Civil War movie, but it's more the tone. I feel like this is a direction the MCU can head in with more stories like this, which I'm not saying they all have to be completely standalone, but through getting rid of the somewhat formula the MCU have had with how this movie has to tie into this, every tone kind of has to feel the same, I feel like that's been one of the things that have led to the idea of superhero fatigue, right? And I think you get that when, you know, you do share a similar identity across movies. You focus more on spectacle over character. You don't really change much up or give an independent tone to a certain project. And I do feel like what they're doing with the Thunderbolts trailer and everything we see here does feel like it's going to have its own identity that separates it from the crowd of what I think a lot of people have come to view as a bit of mediocrity in recent years. So this does, I think another word for it would be, it feels refreshing to me. Now, on the other side of things, some people are saying that, you know, who asked for this, or I'm so indifferent to it, and I feel like, and I wonder if that's the audience being trained into a situation of wanting movies that absolutely have to pertain to the main overarching story of the MCU, and if you don't get a major dose or like progression of that, then you're not so immersed, maybe, or interested in the project. But for someone like me, or how I view myself as an audience member, I do appreciate those movies as well, like big event films that progress the main plot of the MCU, and we know we're going to be getting that with Fantastic Four, and as we move into, you know, Secret Wars and Doomsday and stuff. But I really am seeking projects like this, at least in concept. You know, it's another thing when I see the movie and if I like it or if I don't like it. But I don't know, when I see stuff like this, again, I do need to see it, but the trailer definitely gives across a little light at the end of the tunnel for me. And again, I'm not trying to make it seem like the MCU is just an absolute shell of what it has been, and it has absolutely no chance of success. But all I'm trying to say is that there is a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel for a destination for successful movies that could do pretty damn well in the future, to the point of it making some people maybe eventually say, could this bring Marvel back? I'm not saying this project will bring Marvel back alone, not at all, but in terms of being back to having people actually be excited to see a project like Thunderbolts, because I am seeing a lot of comments at the same time saying, this trailer is pretty sick, this looks pretty cool, can't wait to see it. But that's everything I'm going to get into in today's news roundup, ladies and gentlemen. Definitely let me know your thoughts on every story that we covered in today's video down in the comments section. I will be reading them, I will be responding to them as always. If you got this far, would really appreciate a like, consider subscribing for more news videos just like this. But I'm gonna love you and leave you now. So once again, really appreciate you watching. I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.